Hi there, this is the online lesson plan for workshop number 1. We're going to talk about decoding a chemical formula, and all of the links for this workshop, everything that you need for this first workshop, is all linked in this lesson 2 document. So there are actually 2 workshops today. I'm going to do a separate video for each workshop. And it's really, really important that you go through both workshops and notes documents prior to the Zoom meeting. And I plan on going through both of these workshops as a review on the next Zoom. But I won't have time to redo both workshops. So please take your time. If you would like, grab a piece of paper and a pencil. It might be helpful for you to write a few things down. I'm going to be using the slides today, and so you certainly can open the slides and go there if you'd like to take it step by step. Okay, so let's take a look at the lesson plan. Let's look and see what we've got here. Don't forget the warm-up. We do need to review lesson 1, list some evidence that a chemical change has occurred. We're going to be using the slides. This is going to be the video recorded lesson for workshop 1. And I would like you to take some time to use your text for this lesson. It's really very important that you understand how we write chemical formulas, and I think your text does a pretty good job of explaining that. Okay, after the workshop's done, I would like you to do the drill and practice number 1 online notes, and I'll go over that after I've gone through the slides. So, with a couple workshops and a couple notes documents, you might want to set aside some extra time. You might need to use some time on Friday to get this lesson done. It's just a little bit longer of a lesson. All right. So, benchmark 2, lesson 2 is all about chemical reactions. And our goal is to be able to use symbols and write chemical reaction sentences and eventually get to the point where we can talk about the chemical reactions that are occurring in fireworks. Okay, we're still going to be using the periodic table to help with writing our chemical equation sentences correctly. That means using the correct symbols. So having a copy of your periodic table handy will help. Okay, so I actually did post a workshop video on YouTube a long time ago. I actually forgot all about that until I saw the link. We're going to talk about how to speak in the language of chemical reactions. And I like to compare this to a recipe. Okay, so this is a reaction that you guys have all experienced if you've ever put peroxide on a cut. So hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. That's the formula for peroxide. And when you put peroxide on your hand or your cut, it immediately bubbles up, right? The bubbles is oxygen gas, and the liquid that's left behind after the reaction has occurred is just plain old water. So let's talk about what all these numbers mean in the reaction. The 2 in front of this formula for peroxide means there are 2 H2O2s, 2 molecules of peroxide. Okay? The arrow is the symbol we use for yields or shows that a chemical reaction has occurred. The little numbers are called subscripts, and that tells us how many atoms of each element there are. Okay? And these are like no numbers. You don't ever get to change these numbers, because if you took away the 2 here, you'd have H2O, which is water. Isn't that crazy how just adding 1 oxygen atom makes a completely new substance? I mean, that's just the way chemistry works. H2O2 is peroxide. So what we want to do is use math to calculate how many atoms of each element are present before and after the reaction has occurred. What we're going to prove is the conservation of mass, which means we start with X number of atoms, we end with the same, we just simply rearrange them to make different substances. So I can't just create a hydrogen atom. I can't just create an oxygen atom, but I can put it in a different place and rearrange it to get new chemical and physical properties. Okay, so here's where a paper and pencil might come in handy. So if we were in class, I would be showing this on the screen and you would have a paper copy of this slide. We don't. If you'd like, you can write this down on a piece of paper. This is the formula we just had on the previous slide. But we're going to kind of break it down together to prove that what goes in must come out. So this side of the equation is called the reactant side. This side of the equation is called the product side. So let's talk about how many molecules there are. So on this side, how many molecules of H2O2 are there? There are, pause the video if you want, 2. You're correct. Okay, on this side of the equation, how many molecules of water, H2O, are there? Take a minute and guess. There are, you guessed it, 2. How about oxygen? Ooh, this is a tough one. Sometimes people want to tell me that there are 2, but that's not correct. 2 is the subscript, not the coefficient. When there's nothing here out front, that means 1. So there is 1 molecule of oxygen. Okay, so now we got to get a little bit of math going. We want to know how many total of each atom there is. Okay, so writing a 2 out in front saves us time. It's the same as writing H2O2 twice. I like to think of it as a quick multiplication problem. 2 multiplied by the 2 here is 4. Okay, now there should be 4 on this side if the equation's balanced. 2 times 2 here is 4. Okay, so our hydrogen atoms are balanced. Now we need to add up the oxygen atoms. So this is kind of like the distributive property in math where you multiply across the equation. So this 2 also applies to oxygen. So 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so over here, this is where some people get a little bit lost again. They're like, okay, how do you come up with the 4 oxygen on this side? My most common mistake is people want to tell me 3. Can you see why 3 is incorrect? This 2 is like writing H2O twice. You get 2. 2 times an imaginary 1 is 2 oxygens plus 2 more here. So it balances out. Now, in high school chemistry, a lot of times you have to figure out the coefficients, and it's kind of like a little logic problem. But what we're doing is we're proving the law of conservation of mass. We start with this number of atoms, we end with this number of atoms. Even though we rearranged and made completely new compounds, the number of atoms remains the same. Okay, so here's where your practice comes into play. And this is really, really important. I know that this is just considered notes, but you really need to do this. This is called drill and practice, where you're going to repeat over and over again something we learned. Okay, so this is drill and practice number 1. Excuse me. This is a list of a whole bunch of really common compounds. And I threw in some really tricky ones. Most of them are really easy. I put in some without a subscript, without a coefficient, like this one right here. And then a few down here do have subscripts and coefficients. So you're going to make a copy of this. You're going to go back to your text if you need help. You are going to list the names of all the elements. Okay, so C stands for carbon. And if you need the periodic table, you can. There's lots and lots of repeats. And then how many atoms of each element are present? So this one's easy. There's 6 carbons in a molecule of glucose. So this is notes, but it's really, really important notes because you need to be able to look at any chemical formula, know which atoms and elements and how many of each. All right, now this bottom one is a bonus, okay? We're going to talk about this bottom one at the workshop, and I'm going to see if anybody figured out the correct count for isopropyl alcohol. That's a good one. That one's tricky. Okay, no cheating. Don't ask for any help. All right, so this is the end of workshop 1. Okay, I will continue with the second part of this lesson with workshop 2 in a different video. Okay, if you need to, you can go back and take notes on these 2 slides, and you really need to do this drill and practice worksheet. Okay, it's not turned in, but you should have it done before our next warm up or our next Zoom. Okay, so we'll see you then. Go ahead. If you're ready, once you're done with this, go ahead and click on the next video lesson for workshop number 2.